Sonic controversies. Sonic throughout the years has had a lot of drama. A lot of games and situations that resulted in lots of discourse. So today I wanted to rank every single Sonic controversy from the entire history of the franchise from worst to best. And you may be wondering, how does someone rank a controversy? Well, I'm ranking every controversy based on how impactful they were to the Sonic franchise, and also how justified they were. If I think a discourse was not impactful and unjustified, then it would be in the F tier. If I think a discourse was very impactful and changed Sonic's legacy forever, and it was justified, it would be in the S tier. Now, of course, I won't be talking about every single Sonic controversy that is ever occurred, because there's probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of those. I'm only covering the biggest and most significant events that has caused massive amounts of discourse. For example, Sonic's green eyes, Sonic 06. I'm covering these topics. Feel free to comment your rankings of the controversies down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like so this video can get out to new viewers. Anyways, make sure to subscribe with the bell. I love you guys. Let's jump right into it. Okay, starting off, we have no 3D Sega Saturn Sonic game. Yeah, this one is pretty justified. In a time where the PlayStation 1 was demolishing the entire competition with their 3D games, and with Nintendo making some of their best games ever made with Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and Banjo-Kazooie, theoretically, you would expect the same from Sonic, except that never happened. While every franchise was making their jump into 3D, Sonic did not have one. Now, there is a lot of spin-offs that were 3D, most notably being Sonic R in the hub world of Sonic Jam, but neither of these experiences constituted as an actual Sonic game that mattered. One of these was a collection, and one was a racing spin-off. We needed a big 3D Sonic game that could rival Super Mario 64, but we never got it. And that's partly due to the Sega Saturn being greatly underpowered compared to the competition. This console could not handle a game on the scale of Sonic Adventure. Hell, it might not even be able to handle Ocarina of Time. I think the fact that the Sega Saturn was so underpowered and the fact that they had no good 3D Sonic games was kind of the nail in the coffin for Sega. Because even though the Dreamcast has a stellar lineup and it had so many amazing games, it was not enough to save Sega. And I know there's some Sega Saturn fans out there, and look, I'm not trying to hate on the Sega Saturn, but like, we can admit that like a console's good while also not being the best business-wise. Regardless though, the weaker hardware and no 3D Sonic game was just not a good idea. So we're gonna place the Sega Saturn 3D game in S tier, because this one mess up did a lot of damage. Okay. The jump to 3D. With the release of Sonic Adventure, there were a decent amount of fans who didn't fully enjoy the gameplay. They believed it strayed too far from the classic games. And in all fairness, most of the criticism that I do see for the jump into 3D is from people who came back to the series years later. Disclaimer, I was not born in the 90s, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really see much evidence to prove that the jump to 3D was such a controversial thing and everybody hated 3D Sonic. I mainly only hear it from game critics who play the adventure games and they're like, "Aw man, Sonic hasn't been good since the jump to 3D. I find very few people who grew up in the 90s who were genuinely furious with the release of Sonic Adventure. Now, that's not to say that every classic fan loved the jump to 3D. I'm sure that there's quite a few who did not like Sonic Adventure. But I think most of this controversy stems from people coming back to the adventure games rather than playing it back then and disliking it. Especially for people who re-entered the series with those god-awful ports of the adventure games, which we will be getting to later. Compared to the classic games, it's substantially a lot more linear, with a much larger overarching storyline. The whole level design philosophy and the whole game philosophy is entirely different. In the classic games, there were tons of different pathways that created entirely different sections to levels. while in Adventure and onward with later 3D games, it's mostly a linear obstacle course with some branching pathways, with a lot more focus on spectacle. And look, it's okay to prefer the classic games. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But to hate Sonic Adventure and the 3D games for changing Sonic's philosophy is a little dumb in my opinion. Even Nintendo realized that putting Mario in a sandbox would be a lot cooler than a point A to point B structure to a game. And look how many great Mario games we got from sandbox gameplay. Different does not equal bad. It's okay for a franchise to change direction. It's not bad. And there's been quite a few 3D Sonic games that follow the linear structure just fine. So I find this to be a very dumb and unjustified controversy. I think it's okay to prefer the classic games, and I think it's okay to say that 3D Sonic hasn't been the best with the linear structure. But to say that Sonic can't ever be good in this structure, I'd feel like is kind of biased. So we're gonna put it into the F tier. Before we continue, this video is sponsored by me. Recently, I've found that doing content is very time consuming, especially when I want to make the content that I want to make. So I am now starting up a Patreon so you guys can donate to support me. It is completely optional and you are not obligated to support me. And if you want to anyways, leave a like on this video and that's just fine by me. We have the $3 tier, which will get your name listed at the end of every video I make, and you get nice little sneak peeks at every video I'm making before I even publish it. For the $5 tier, you get to see my videos 3 days early, and your name gets read aloud at the end of all my videos, alongside being able to see all the sneak peeks and all that other stuff. If you want to support me in what I do, feel free to donate to my Patreon. What that would be doing would be helping me with the video process, because 100% of the money I'm making from this Patreon is going back into this channel, with editors and thumbnail artists and whatever else I gotta pay for. It accumulates to a lot. And with that said, I hope you support me, but if you don't, that's okay too. Thank you so much, and I appreciate all of you who watch my videos, regardless if you donate or not. Thank you so much. Let's move on with the video. Next up, with the jump into 3D, we also got design changes. All of the Sonic characters got lankier, and now they have colored eyes. A lot of people had some very emotional reactions to this, and I swear, these people would not shut the f up about the green eyes for like ever. I grew up with the 2010 Sonic, and even in the 2010s, I remember there being so many people still wishing for Sonic to go back to his classic design. Even a decade later, people were still complaining that he had green eyes. That is multiple eras of your life that transitions for you to hate one aspect of this character. They just could not take a hint that Sonic was going to keep the green eyes. Nobody could get over it. And it was so infuriating, especially because I actually preferred the modern design. So when I saw other people complaining about it, I felt like it was a threat. I remember I was like 7 years old, scared to death that Sega would listen to the haters and change his design back. That was like my worst nightmare as a child. I was so convinced that Sega was gonna cave in and we would have classic Sonic forever. But they didn't. So we chillin'. I understand the hatred for this new design. If you grew up with classic Sonic, it's probably weird seeing modern Sonic. And if I had to say so, I think they should have stuck with classic Sonic. Because when your brand is so well known for your mascot and his appearance, you probably should never tamper with it, because it causes issues like the one we have today, where your fan base for your property is split on which design they prefer, and that's not a good thing. So really, even though I prefer modern Sonic's design, I think changing Sonic's design in any way, shape, or form is just detrimental to the series. But they keep doing it and they get backlash every time. So normally I would put this in the D tier because it is a pretty dumb reason to be this upset. And to be fair, Sega should have not changed Sonic's design, but you guys have no idea. It's not really popular anymore. I haven't seen anybody complain about Sonic's green eyes in years. it is for sure a dead discussion. So it may not seem like a huge controversy, but if you grew up in the community in the 2000s or the early 2010s, you would have known how obnoxious these guys were, because they never shut up. God have mercy, because they are not sleeping until Sega walks back on this design change. So I'm gonna put this in the F tier. I hate this. So, back in 2005, they gave Shadow his own game. And in that game, they gave him a weapon that goes pew pew. I really have to watch what I say here, so that's why I'm beating around the bush. And a lot of people had a problem with Shadow owning a firearm. Personally speaking, I could not care less. Was it weird that Shadow had a firearm? Yes. It is Sonic the Hedgehog, so Shadow owning a firearm is kinda insane. But Sonic was known to be edgy, so it's not like the craziest thing ever made. Sonic Adventure 2 has a kind of a dark story, like there's a little girl that dies in that game. I could see this existing in the Sonic universe. The only problem was that the game sucked. If it was good, then really what reason is there to hate this so passionately? Like, I don't even care. I do understand that ultimately giving a kid's character a firearm is not the smartest decision, even if the franchise set a bit of an edgier standard for itself. But like, I don't really care, and I don't think many people today care that much, so I'll put this in the C tier. Kinda justifiable, but it's not a big deal. Like, it don't matter that much. Sonic 06. Do I gotta say anything else? Okay, so Sonic 06 released and it was yada yada, bad game, worst game of all time. Sonic kissed a human, and that's gross. Whatever. It's bad. Alright, it's bad. I unfortunately do believe that this controversy was very much deserved and justified, and I think you guys know why. Yes, the game was bad, of course. But the biggest reason why Sonic 06 was important for Sonic was because it finally checked Sega. It was a game that put a stop to Sega doing whatever they wanted to. Before Sonic 06, Sonic was in a weird spot. Sure, he didn't release anything nearly as controversial as Sonic 06, but for the past few games, more and more glaring issues were just starting to pop up over time. Sonic Heroes was relatively positively received, but it was pretty buggy and unpolished, and there were a lot of oversights with that game, especially with the chaotic story. It wasn't terrible, but it was a sign that Sega was losing the quality assurance that Sonic games previously had. Then Shadow the Hedgehog came out, and again, it's like they were doing whatever they wanted to. It's like nobody was in the office to say, hey, don't do that, this is not fun, let's fix this part of the game. So when Sonic 06 released, it was the accumulation of all the sloppiness behavior that Sega had obtained. It's the result of Sega constantly crunching their teams. Iizuka almost died making Sonic Heroes. Shadow was probably crunched, definitely. And Sonic 06 is confirmed crunched. Like, that game was made really fast. And it unfortunately resulted in great consequences. And I find this kind of interesting because all of the dumb critiques of the Sonic Adventure games and Sonic Heroes kind of became true with Sonic 06. The critiques that the adventure games were not momentum based and that they had really bad edgy stories. They may have not been true, but they were common critiques. But with Sonic 06, they became true. The game was not momentum based and the story was actually pretty bad. All of those smaller issues that weren't even that big of a problem with the previous games became a reality with Sonic 06 and became bigger. All of the gossip spread about Sonic Adventure was finally true about Sonic 06. And then that gossip became Sonic Adventure's legacy. Suddenly, all the Sonic games in 3D were bad, and all of them were buggy, and all of them were unpolished with bad, edgy stories. Sonic 06 became the very thing that critics were always criticizing Sonic of being. This also happened with Sonic Forces, and we'll get to that later. All in all, though, after Sonic 06, it forced Sega's hand into quality assurance. Say what you want about Sonic Unleashed, whether it's a bad game or that the Werehog sucks, that game has mountains more polished than anything released previously. Sega clearly wanted to make the quality better for these games. They were actually trying with Sonic Unleashed, and that went on to create Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. Games that are fantastic and brought a lot of positive attention to Sonic. Overall, I'd say that this is an S-tier deserved controversy. Sega was being evil and decided to rush their employees and make a bad game. So yeah, it was deserved. Sonic and the Secret Rings was a bad game. I loved it as a kid, but when I replayed it as an adult, it was pretty bad. I still had a small guilty pleasure with the game, but even I can admit it's not good. It's really bad. Not because of the story, soundtrack, or visuals. I love all those. It was the controls. People really did not like the motion controls featured in Sonic and the Secret Rings, and I cannot blame them because it sucks so bad. The motion controls in this game was just so annoying to use, and it causes so many deaths because it's unpredictable. Having the entire game controlled by how you move a Wiimote is just a horrible idea. And it's unfortunate because Secret Rings, like, the idea of the game sounds fantastic without motion controls. The world, the soundtrack, the story, it's all good. They should have just made it an adventure game, and it would have been fine. So I'm gonna put this in the A tier. I don't think this controversy was the most impactful, but it was very justified. Oh boy, the one you've been waiting for. As you guys know, Sonic Unleashed is my favorite Sonic game of all time, so obviously I'm gonna put this in the F tier. But I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't be biased in this video. I gotta be honest with you. While I do like the Werehog, I can still see that it's a huge pace breaker for the game. His gameplay is a massive diversion from the main boosting gameplay, and it was a lot slower in a Sonic game that was meant to be fast. So people hated the Werehog. They hated him. And look, understandably so. I get it. You don't want to go slow in a Sonic game, and the Werehog levels did drag on quite a bit. However, I do think that people's feelings about the Werehog bled a bit too much into the rest of the game. Because a lot of people just flat out say that this game was bad and another soulless Sonic game. But not only is it so far from soulless, but the boosting gameplay is genuinely like 11 out of 10 peak gameplay. I don't see how this game gets anything lower than a 6 out of 10, and I'm being serious. So, I do understand the controversy from the sense that the Werehog was not a good decision for Sonic Unleashed, but to say Sonic Unleashed is a bad game because of the Werehog is a little insane in my opinion. I don't think you can play a level like Rooftop Run Day and say it's bad. That is really good gameplay. So, we're gonna place this controversy in the B tier. It was very justified, but maybe a little too hated. Okay, Sonic's Smash moveset. This has nothing to do with a Sonic game, but rather Sonic's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. And Smash fans, while being excited for Sonic being one of the first third-party characters, ended up absolutely hating him. Because Sonic is undebatably one of the best characters in the game. Before Minecraft Steve, he might have been the best. Not because he's awesome and cool, but because his moveset is dumb. Like, it's just flat out dumb. The biggest problem with his moveset has to do with stalling. So, if you don't know what I mean, I'll explain it here. Basically, a lot of Sonic players would get down to their last stock and fight the player until they reach a higher percentage, and then proceed to run away and avoid them at all costs until the timer runs out. And since Sonic has so much air control and he's so fast and his recovery is abundantly helpful, it's so easy to avoid the other player. Sonic is usually in the top 3 of all Smash characters because of this. A lot of people throughout the years have asked for Sonic's moveset to be changed or reworked, but to be honest, I don't really know what else they could do with Sonic's moveset. Most of his attacks have to do with the spin dash and homing attack and I don't know, that's very Sonic-y to me. What else would Sonic use to attack with? Homing attack, spin dash, punch. Like that's Sonic. To clarify, I'm not a huge Smash professional. I've played the game quite a bit, but some of my friends have like thousands of hours in this game. I barely broke 100. So I'm not like the most qualified to talk about this. I don't know if they could rework his moveset and still keep it authentic to Sonic. I'm not sure. But if they can, more power to them. Hey, this is me during editing. I decided to add this part in because I think I should clarify that not every Sonic player is a total garbage human being. There is a lot of Sonic players out there that aren't targeting timeouts and who are actually very skilled with the character. Shout out to pro players like You're Too Slow and Sonics. I'm not a big Smash guy, but every time I see their clips, it's always some great stuff. I think the majority of Sonic players aren't targeting timeouts. They're genuinely just trying to get good at the character. And it is kind of Sonic's nature to run away from the opponent. That's kind of how you play with Sonic. You run away and wait for your opponent to mess up so you can punish them. That's like the whole point of Sonic. So yeah, not every Sonic player is bad. There's just a select few who are. Anyways, let's continue. I'm gonna place this into the B tier. Honestly, it's more of a Nintendo controversy than a Sonic controversy. But I'm still putting it on here because people have been debating Sonic's moveset for almost 2 decades now. This is the dumbest, worst, most stupid critique of all time. Why does Sonic have a sword? I don't know, because it's awesome? Genuinely, how people think that Sonic owning a sword is out of character will always be bizarre to me. Sonic is an edgier character that has like anime styled writing. He is cool, he is edgy. This is so in character. Like, what are we talking about here? Sonic with a sword is so awesome. Like, I cannot express that enough. That is so cool. You have to be so unfun to look at this and be like, nope, not good. Not good. Sonic shouldn't own a sword. Nope. Sure, the game was bad. I won't lie about that. But the idea for this game, Sonic being in a medieval setting with a sword, that is awesome. That is creative. We need more of that. And I remember this as a kid and I thought it was so stupid, but people would always say that Black Knight copied Zelda. That's right, Zelda. I understand that Twilight Princess featured motion controls with swinging the sword, and as well as Skyward Sword also had motion controls with the sword. But I don't think that applies here because not only was this game going to be motion controls from the beginning because it's a part of the Storybook series, a series of Sonic games that were built around the idea of motion controls, but also it's a story about Excalibur, a legendary sword. What else would they put the motion controls on in this game? It makes sense for the game to have sword swinging mechanics with the motion controls. Also, the gameplay is nothing alike. This game plays nothing like Zelda. It's not even close. Especially now that I've played almost every Zelda game, and I love Zelda with a burning passion. This is like my favorite gaming franchise, tied with Sonic. I can confidently say that these are not even close. They both have swords. That is true. You know what? You're right. They both have swords and motion controls. I'll shut up. One game is a platformer using motion controls, and the other is a puzzle-solving story game. If you can't see the difference, you're lost. We're gonna place this one in the F tier. Later in the 2000s and the early 2010s, a lot of people started going back to the Sonic Adventure games and claiming they were always bad. Now, it's understandable to an extent. These games have not aged very well, and by modern standards, it should be reviewed lower. But a 48? You're trolling me. Granted, a lot of the aging aspects were created by the horrible and horrendous remasters made for the game. Specifically, the remaster for the first Sonic Adventure, which completely changed the game's art style and created more bugs for the game. And I think everyone is right in saying that these ports did kinda harm Sonic Adventure's reputation. Regardless though, even if you weren't playing the remasters, you can't avoid it. These games did not age the best. So either way, people were going to clown on these games no matter what. My only problem was that people were a bit too harsh on these games, and they don't really show the same amount of outrage for other titles. I love Super Mario 64. Top 3 game of all time. I'll say it right here. That game is a masterpiece. I can admit that the game did not age well. I only like the game because I like the camera. I've played this game so much that I know how the camera works. Thus, it does not bother me. But in reality, the camera in Mario 64 is much worse than the camera in Sonic Adventure. That's just me being honest. Honestly, I'd say mechanically Sonic Adventure aged better than Mario 64. The only problem that Adventure had is that it didn't age well in some of the design aspects. Having Big the Cat, that doesn't age well. Super Mario 64 has nothing compared to the low of Big the Cat in Sonic Adventure. Neither of these games aged well, but only one of them got destroyed in re-reviews, and I think that's very unfair. I'm gonna place this in the C tier. It's justifiable to the extent that, yes, these games did not age well, but a 48 is kinda insane. There's no way that this game dropped off that much in quality. Sonic Freeriders. I don't even want to say anything for this one. Like, it sucks, alright? The game uses full motion controls of your entire body, and it uses the highly functional, super technologically advanced Xbox Kinect. I remember playing this game when I was little, and even my dumb child brain thought this game was absolute trash. It's going in the S tier. There's almost like no defense you can make for this game. Sonic Lost World copied Mario Galaxy. In Lost World, a lot of the level design features 360-degree spherical planets, just like Mario Galaxy, and even as a kid, I noticed this. I knew Sonic Team was not slick. I remember as a kid, I always called this game Sonic Galaxy because it's literally just Sonic, but Mario Galaxy. And I was exactly right. They definitely were inspired by Mario Galaxy. It's blatant. I don't even have to theorize about this. With that said, I still do really like Lost World. I do, in fact, think it's a pretty good game, but even I would have preferred something a bit more original. So I do think it's very reasonable that people were upset that this game took so much inspiration from Mario Galaxy to the point where it's blatant and completely obvious, but I don't think that makes it a bad game necessarily. I'm not saying that people solely dislike this game for its planet level design, but I don't think this controversy completely ruins Lost World by itself. So we're gonna place this in the A tier. It's pretty valid for people to be upset about this, but it doesn't ruin the game necessarily. I feel like this wasn't what made Lost World a bad game for some people, but mostly because of its level design and how it's played. Oh god, this game, what do I even say? I said this on Twitter, and you can agree or disagree. I think Sonic Boom was by far the worst decision Sega's ever made for Sonic. Now, yes, I can admit that Sonic 06 probably had more impact. It kind of ruined Sonic's reputation, but Sonic Boom, it just did not work. Not only did they change Sonic's design once again, which again caused backlash, but they also made a game worse than Sonic 06 in almost every single way imaginable. And this brought a lot of negative PR to Sonic's name once again. It was a disaster that should have never happened. And this may be controversial to say. I understand that Red Button, the team that was working on Sonic Boom, was rushed, and they should have never been rushed. That was a horrible decision by Sega. But even then, they should have never made Sonic Boom, even if the game was good. Because look here, you just had Sonic Generations and Sonic Colors, amazing games that reviewed exceptionally well, and Sonic was finally being seen in a positive light for the first time in a decade. And Sonic Lost World, even though it wasn't the most positively received, most people weren't even like really talking about the game. It was like a small hiccup, you can still bounce back from that. For some reason, the next decision after the success of Generations and Colors is to reboot the franchise? and add further confusion to the Sonic universe? Sega, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Me as a kid and many others thought that this was the Sonic. We thought modern Sonic was dead and this was the new design for the foreseeable future. Mainly because they didn't make it clear enough. They advertised this game as the big next jump for Sonic. We thought this was the future. They did that, and they also made a horrible game, and it got horrible reviews. The entirety of Sonic Boom was just a giant negative PR nightmare, and for what? You had all the positivity surrounding your brand, you were on a great path, and you decided to just ruin it for no reason. They should have given Red Button some other game to work on, and kept it in the modern Sonic timeline, but here we are. So we're gonna put the Sonic Boom controversy in the S tier. Very much deserved, and there was no sense behind any of these decisions. Sonic Forces. Casuals will say that Sonic Forces was bad or mediocre, but most won't really care that much. It was a game that came and went. Sonic fans, however, hate this game. This is the bane of their existence. And I see why. I also hate this game. It had false advertising. It tried to make you believe that this game was some grand adventure where you get to fight chaos and all these villains, but you only really fought 2 of them. The game was 4 hours long, and it was a slap in the face to every Sonic fan who wanted a more ambitious and awesome story with a return to the boost formula. This game was just holding X until you got to the end of the stage. It was a boring, disappointing, horrible game. Now, it's not the worst video game ever made in the existence of gaming. It's pretty bad, but like some of these Sonic fans act like this is the worst thing of all time. It's not even the worst Sonic game. It's like a 3 out of 10 platformer that you should never play. But are we really gonna say Sonic Forces is worse than Sonic Blast? I do think this was a very important controversy though, because it once again made Sonic Team get it together. It kinda mirrors Sonic 06 in a way. Sonic 06 became the very thing that people did not like about the adventure games, while Sonic Forces became everything that people did not like about the Boost games. A common critique for the Boost games being Sonic Unleashed, Colors, and Generations was that they were glorified temple run levels where you hold X and that's it. Boost to win, running like a maniac. Of course, that's not true for this trilogy of games. You can't just hold X and win. That didn't stop some people from saying that because, you know, it's just online discourse. But we all knew it wasn't true. Then Sonic Forces releases, and the game became everything that critics accused the Boost games of being. It became Boost to win, and it became the automated experience that people criticize the Boost games for. And once again, it caused Sonic Team to change direction completely. Sonic Forces was too linear and too automated. Well, let's make open world Sonic. Hell yeah! Without Sonic Forces, we would not have Sonic Frontiers or Shadow Generations, which are some of my favorite Sonic games of all time. It's crazy that the best games come after big failures. After Sonic 06, we got Unleashed, and Colors and Generations, and after Forces we got Frontiers and Shadow Gens, and those games are awesome. So I'm gonna place Sonic Forces in the A tier. It deserved all of the hate it got, but it's not the worst video game of all time, and it didn't really get the same amount of hate as Sonic 06. So it wasn't more impactful than 06. The Quills. People did not like Sonic's Quills in Sonic Forces. They once again changed Sonic's design, and I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate Sonic with shorter quills. I think when he has longer quills, he looks so much more cool and awesome. I don't really care about the silhouette. I think that looks stupid. I want the longer quills back. To be honest though, I don't really care anymore. Just like the green eyes, they should have never made this decision in the first place. But now we have to stick with it because people are starting to prefer shorter quills. I'm okay with that. Just Sega, please never change Sonic's design ever again. It's okay where it's at. You can give him a new model, maybe make him a little bit more rubbery, more expressive, but don't make any huge changes to his design. He is perfectly fine where he's at right now. I don't like the shorter quills, but I'll deal with it. I'm fine with that. It doesn't ruin the game for me. I just want the design changes to stop before we're arguing about Sonic's height because Sega eventually lowered his leg length. So Sega, stop! We're gonna put this in the D tier because this debate isn't very important and it doesn't impact the series very much. I do put this above the F tier because the people who complain about the shorter quills are not nearly as obnoxious as the green eyes detractors. I don't see the short quills debate lasting longer than a decade. The Drought. This controversy was exclusive to the Sonic community. Back in 2020 to 2021, there were no Sonic news. No Sonic announcements, no Sonic anything, nothing at all. And while I do think that was important because eventually we did get Sonic Frontiers, and I would rather Sonic Team take 5 years to make a fantastic game than to rush out another, so I'm happy they took their time with Frontiers. Only Lord knows what would have happened if Frontiers released a year earlier. At the same time, they could have released some kind of spin-off or something or done anything. A lot of Sonic fans were very upset with the wait for new games. And most commonly, large critics like Premi de Remy was fighting for his life every day. I watched that man get torn apart on Twitter like every day of the Drought. Shout out to Prem, by the way, he's a big inspiration for me. Regardless, it wasn't a huge deal and it didn't impact very much. It was just a big discourse because we were bored. Yeah, Sega could have released something, maybe a spin-off or something, but it doesn't really matter that much, so we're gonna put this in the D tier. Sonic Colors Ultimate, a remaster of Colors that was really bad. It was buggy and it had all sorts of issues with its graphics. This was definitely very bad for the Sonic brand because this remaster had so many issues, especially at launch, so many glitches and bugs, and this was the first time Sonic had released a game in like over 2 years, and the first release he makes when he comes back is completely hated and destroyed by online discourse. Nobody heard anything about Sonic, and he finally came back, and now everyone hates him again. But to be honest, I don't think everything about this remaster was bad. I think the texture work is actually pretty good in a lot of areas, especially in places like Planet Wisp, and even Aquarium Park looked absolutely beautiful. Cosmetics were pretty cool, and the Metal Sonic races were awesome. Now, I'm not excusing any of the issues for this remaster. It was more bad than good, I will admit that. Sonic's model, admittedly, is not that great, and some areas just don't look right, especially in places like Tropical Resort. For some reason, it's very dark in Colors Ultimate and lost all of its colors, ironically. However, now we have Blue Wolf, who is fixing the remaster for this game, and it looks absolutely stunning now. I mean, look at this game. It's beautiful. Anyways, we're gonna put this in the B tier. It was a pretty bad controversy, and it was very justified. Sega should have done more to ensure that this remaster was ready to release. Sonic Frontiers reveal. Oh man, I don't like thinking about this time of the Sonic franchise. When this game was revealed, Sonic was trending all over the internet. Everyone was talking about this game, and they weren't saying good things. They were all talking about how this game looked like trash. Genuine booty butt. The gameplay reveal was just Sonic running around a grassy field with nothing happening, and it was possibly one of the worst marketings for a game ever. I personally was very critical of the marketing for Sonic Frontiers because this game looked horrible. And they just did not do a good job at showing what this game was. Yeah, sure, they showed Sonic running around in the open world, but he wasn't doing anything. They did not show the philosophy behind the game. They didn't show how you're supposed to grind out memory tokens or grind out chaos emeralds. They didn't show any of that. So yeah, every time you looked at a trailer, you saw Sonic running around around doing something random, and it didn't look fun. Of course, the game released, and I think it's pretty good. But in all fairness, a lot of the issues we saw in the trailer were issues in the final release of the game. It was still very unpolished, and there was still tons of automation, and cyberspace was pretty bad. Of course, that didn't stop people from harassing anyone who dared critique the trailers. This game and its marketing and the entire discourse surrounding Sonic Frontiers was the reason for my villain origin story. I cannot take Sonic discourse seriously ever again after this game. I got berated and people hated me, and I got in so much drama for just not liking specific aspects of these trailers. I had content creators reach out to tell me how bad faith I was, like it's a video game, bro. It's not that deep. And the thing that annoys me most is that a lot of Sonic fans came to agree with me after a year of this game's release. All of the things I critique Sonic Frontiers of, the automation, the polish, and the cyberspace, these were the reasons why everyone eventually turned on Sonic Frontiers. Everyone liked this game on release, but after like 6 months to a year, it's like everyone in this community turned on it and now calls it mid or trash. For the same reasons that I critique the trailers for. You can't make this up. People were critiquing Frontiers for its issues before the game release. We didn't have to make it this far in the discourse. We could have just been like, hey, yeah, this game has some issues, but I'm still excited. And that's why Sonic discourse is unreasonably stupid. I understand that a lot of Sonic fans want to be excited for a game, and that's perfectly fine. I never have ever told anyone to not be excited for a Sonic game. In fact, I always open up the discussion to anybody. If you thought Sonic Forces was the greatest game of all time, I'm not going to tell you your opinion is wrong. I just don't like it when this community attacks someone for their opinion, regardless if it's positive or negative. It goes both ways. For just disagreeing with you. And sometimes when someone disagrees with you, they're not just completely making it up to be negative. Sometimes we have very valid reasons. And sometimes negativity and positivity is a good thing because it sends a message to Sega. For all the people who start disliking Frontiers, that's okay. I mean, games change with replays. But the hostility that was present during Sonic Frontiers' release cycle was just so unnecessary because I think people mostly agree on this. Automation is not good, and yeah, Sonic Frontiers is pretty unpolished. It's okay to voice that criticism. And that's why I never trust Sonic fan opinions until about a year after the game has been released, because every Sonic game is the best Sonic game until a year later. And then we start hearing the real opinions, everyone starts saying how they truly feel. And that's the thing, you can be excited and be critical of a game. That's entirely possible. Anyways, rant over. We're gonna put this in the A tier. I don't think it hurt the Sonic brand very much because eventually Sonic Frontiers did come out and it had a very positive reception. But man, this controversy was so deserved because Sega, what were you doing? This is the worst marketing I've ever seen for a video game. Sonic Origins, a game collection featuring all of the classic games in widescreen. I love this game collection. I have over 100 hours put into it, but not many other people liked it. Because on release, it was really buggy and unpolished. It was blurry for some reason, which really sucked, and the Sonic 3 soundtrack was altered, and that's pretty bad. I definitely feel like this collection is very overhated. Yeah, it definitely has some issues. I'm not denying that whatsoever. But honestly, it's really cool to have these games in widescreen, very accessible. And honestly, it has my favorite version of Sonic CD. They kind of changed the physics of Sonic CD just a tiny bit, and I don't know, I kind of like it. It's also been fixed quite a bit. Like, I've never really had this game crash on me, and the blurry filter's gone, so everything's crisp and clean. I also love the story mode of being able to play all of the classic games in order with cutscenes. That's pretty fire. And this isn't really a defense for the game collection, but there's some mods that are seriously awesome for Sonic Origins. Ultimately, though, it was still buggy and unpolished on release, and I can't really defend that. And also, it's kind of missing basic features like a level select. That's kind of stupid. There should have been a bit more of one that was built in and not just a time attack mode. So I'll put this in the C tier. It was kind of warranted because Sega didn't finish the collection on release, but I do feel like it's one of the most mistreated Sonic products of all time. I don't think it was actually that horrible. Ooh, I made a video about this, you should go watch it. Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon was a pretty controversial final update to Sonic Frontiers that set out to finish the game, and it was very buggy, unpolished, and unbalanced. How many times have I said that in this video? Unpolished and buggy? That's a lot of Sonic games. Now, on release, I didn't really like the Final Horizon, but after some updates and some fixes, I actually really like the update now. And in my video, I explain exactly why. So I'm not gonna explain it here because I talked about that for an hour long. Overall, though, the bad publicity was not good, and this update released in a very unfinished condition. It was almost unplayable near the end of this update with the Titan trial. So I fully understand the outrage for this update. I'll place this in the B tier. For the final controversy, we have Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Not because the game is bad, it actually looks pretty good. And I'm sure it's a fantastic game. However, the community is pretty split on the pricing. They priced this game at $70 standard and a $90 staggering dollars for the deluxe edition. Wow. I was very disappointed with the pricing for this game because I felt like it was the perfect chance for Sega to clown on Nintendo for pricing their kart racer at $80. This was Sega's chance to make a game that has some actual competition to Mario Kart. At the time, Mario Kart World was only getting negative publicity. The game was $80. It had an empty open world. The game was also lacking in content. I still loved playing the game, but even I will admit that this game is dookie compared to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. This was definitely a downgrade. And then you had Sonic Crossworlds getting all positive attention. This game had other gaming characters. It had crossplay. You could play on all platforms. And assumingly, it was going to be cheaper. If they priced this at $60 with a $70 deluxe, it would have been a slam dunk. I mean, look at that. Sega focused on adding tons of content to their Sonic Kart Racer, making it as good as possible, and made it cheaper than Nintendo's Kart Racer. It's a power move. And I understand that you can never beat Mario Kart, but Sonic could have still provided a banger that sold millions and millions of copies. Crash Racing sold 10 million units. Sonic could easily do more than that if it's a good enough deal. Sonic is a bigger name than Crash. But nope, $70. And if you want all that extra cool content that they've been hyping up and putting in all of the trailers, then you have to pay $90. Wow. Way to ruin all of the hype for this game. Now look, I bought Mario Kart World mainly because I'm a huge Nintendo fan and it was the only launch title for Switch 2 and it was only $50. Even then, I'm still a little bit more confident in Mario Kart World being better than Crossworlds. That's just my personal opinion, how I see it. I've enjoyed Mario Kart games a lot more than a lot of Sonic racing games. So with that said, I'm not dropping $70 to $90 for another kart racer that's probably not even gonna be as good as the one I played previously. Let's be honest, it's not good when Nintendo prices their game at $80, and it's not good when Sonic does it. To be honest, both of these games are just big disappointments for me, and that's very unfortunate. So, for the first time ever in my Sonic Tuber career, I am sitting this one out. I am not buying Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Not necessarily in protest, because I doubt Sega would care if I didn't buy the game. I doubt Izuka's in his office like, oh my god, Matthasnocuts is not buying the game? We have to lower the price, you know? That's not happening. I'm mainly not buying it because I don't think it's gonna be worth it. I don't think the fun I will have with the game will be worth the money, and I don't really want to make content on it. Why would I even buy it? It is what it is. I'll probably pick it up on a price drop when it gets down to like 60, 50, 40 bucks. whenever that decides to happen. The community is very divided on this though. Even another creator, SF Productions, is not buying the game. Awesome content creator, by the way. He's one of the best in the space. Either way, in my personal opinion, I think the price should have been $60 or $50. The fact that this game is more expensive than Shadow Generations, which I can almost confidently say will be the better aging product, is a little insane. Shadow Gens is definitely way more worth the money. Not the craziest controversy in the world. I doubt this game will ruin Sonic's racing legacy. I'm sure it'll be just fine. And, you know, I'll say it here, I bet it will break 1 million units. I bet it will sell well. But maybe not as well as they could have. So, I'll place this in the B tier. Hey, it's me. So I realize I left out some pretty big controversies I should probably talk about right now. So I'm coming back after editing this video to add in some more entries. This is a huge one that I didn't even talk about, but when the first Sonic movie was shown off, there was a different design for Sonic that was really bad. And this is one of those moments in the Sonic community where I think collectively almost everybody agreed that this design was horrible. Nobody liked this design, it was terrible, and thank God Sega decided to change it. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the new movie Sonic design because it still doesn't look like modern Sonic and his arms are blue, but it's like a massive upgrade from the previous. All in all, this was a very deserved controversy. I'm gonna put this in the S tier because Sonic definitely deserved this, but thankfully Paramount fixed the design and now we're all good. Back in the early 2010s, Sega decided to make a sequel to the original classic Sonic trilogy by making a fourth one, and it was complete, utter dog shit. I can't even mince the words for you, like Sonic 4 is just terrible. How do you go backwards? Sonic 3 implemented multiple playable characters with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. There was like 12 zones in that game and a big overarching story, and now Sonic 4 has 4 zones. It's split up into 2 parts, and there's only one playable character being Sonic. And by the way, none of these zones are original, they're just mock-ups of the previous. There was an episode 2 that was kinda better, but honestly it's also bad too. Both of these games suck. I don't know why Sega thought in any way, shape, or form that this was a valid sequel to these legendary games. Yeah, it deserves all of its hate. Putting this in S tier, f*** Sonic 4. So throughout the years, Sonic has had multiple different voice actors of the likes of Ryan Drummond, Jason Griffith, or Roger Craig Smith. And everyone has their own preferred actor, and it seems like nobody can agree on what voice sounds the most Sonic. Every time they change the voice actor for Sonic, it has gotten immense backlash for years. I think most people today do not like Roger Craig Smith as Sonic. Most people today, I think, prefer Jason Griffith because I see him getting like the most praise online. But is it the most significant thing in the world? Do casuals even care about this? Probably not. And me personally, I don't really care that much. I will say that I do have a preference. My favorite actor is Roger Craig Smith, solely because I feel like the voice direction they give to Roger is something I can take a bit more seriously. And I know you guys might call cap on that for a second, but hold on. Obviously, when he's saying baldy big nose hair, I can't take that seriously. But in games like Frontiers and even some moments in Forces, he kind of has a more mature voice. And I understand that's most people's criticism of Roger Craig Smith is that he sounds too mature for Sonic, but I kind of like that. I don't really like the over-the-top, like, woo, let's go, Sonic speed! I don't really like that. I think Frontiers has the best Sonic voice, and I'll end it there. I'll put this in the C tier. This isn't really important. This is the funniest entry of the video. I love Ian Flynn. He's such a nice guy. But Sonic fans hate this dude. Mainly because there's a lot of criticisms to be made of Ian Flynn's writing. For one, he is the destruction of Son Amy, and that's the world's greatest sin. And some would say that he doesn't understand Sonic as a character. Without getting too much into spoilers, a lot of the debates I see around Ian Flynn is in regards to Sonic being a bit too charitable to the villains. Ian Flynn kind of treats Sonic like Spider-Man, where he'll do anything by any means to stop his enemy, but he will never kill his enemy, because Sonic does not kill. And that's a big debate amongst many Sonic fans on whether or not Sonic should kill and if he can kill. In my personal opinion, I don't think he should. Sonic is about peace, he's about love, he's about keeping unity for everyone. I don't think Sonic canonically should ever kill anybody. That's just my opinion. Now, there are some very valid criticisms of Ian Flynn. Like, for example, he does put a lot of references in his writing, almost like a Family Guy cutaway gag. Sonic will be walking around, he's like, ah man, this reminds me of the time I went to Metal Harbor. This was a big problem with the Sonic Generations port in Shadow Generations, where he rewrote a lot of the dialogue to just force these references in, and it doesn't work very well.
We're traveling through time, Sonic!
Without the time stones?
So, I'll give it to the Sonic fans here, that is not a W. So, overall, I'd say that Ian Flynn is a pretty good writer. He's personally my favorite writer for the Sonic series. I really like Sonic Frontier's story, and honestly, I hope he's writing the next game. But at the same time, there are criticisms to be made. I think he needs to chill on the references. They're getting a little out of hand at this point. And he needs to stop trying to rewrite Sonic's history. I think that is a challenge that should never be taken on. Sonic's continuity is a mess. Do not touch it. Just leave it a mess, alright? So we're gonna place this into the C tier. Anyways, that's it. We can end the video now. And with that said, that is everything for today's video. If I missed any huge controversies that were kind of important to Sonic's legacy, let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to discuss amongst yourselves whether you disagree or agree with me. I don't care either way. I'm interested in seeing what you guys have to say. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. It helps this video get out there to you guys. And if you want to support me further, I have a Patreon, and with the $5 plan, you can see these videos 3 days early. And I'm done with the promotions. Let's end the video. I love you guys. Peace out. Shout out to ArcherXYZ for subscribing to the Supporter Plus plan. Thank you to both of my Patreon supporters. Peace out.